the storm is brewing. Just when you think tensions couldn't escalate further, Russia's audacious maneuvers have thrown the world into chaos. Last week, a chilling development occurred when two Iskander-M missile systems were repositioned in Kaliningrad, dangerously close to the Polish border. These short-range ballistic missiles possess the terrifying capability to strike targets up to 500 kilometers, approximately 310 miles away. Equipped with an array of warheads, including cluster munitions and even nuclear options, the Iskander missiles are arguably one of the most lethal components of Russia's military arsenal. Striking at speeds exceeding Mach 7 over 5,000 miles per hour, these missiles glide through the skies with alarming agility, able to dodge interceptors that stand in their way. The Iskander-M variant, most frequently deployed, has already wreaked havoc across Ukraine since the onset of the conflict, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Ukraine has had its share of victories, like the notorious day when 11 of these missiles were intercepted, but the relentless onslaught persists. The Russian military claims to have obliterated over 1,400 high-value targets throughout the conflict, yet it's critical to approach these numbers with skepticism, as many assertions from Moscow lack credibility. Evidence, however, shows that these missiles have decimated significant military assets, from HIMARS systems to fighter jets. The proximity of Iskander missile systems to Poland is generating panic across Europe. 6 NATO countries lie within their striking radius: Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Sweden, and Germany, including critical capitals like Warsaw and Berlin. What's more unsettling is the whispered rumors of a new Iskander variant, potentially equipped with solid fuel engines, extending its reach up to an unimaginable 620 miles. If such a weapon exists, the implications for NATO are alarming, as countless cities would become vulnerable. With each passing day, Russia's bold actions fuel the flames of conflict. As they conduct military exercises named Zapad 2025, the air crackles with tension. What will happen when NATO decides it can no longer remain passive? Will the delicate balance tip into a full-blown war? If so, who will pay the price? The world watches, breathless and anxious. In the simmering tension of Eastern Europe, a grave situation unfolds, threatening to ignite a firestorm. On September 10, Russia initiated a missile and drone barrage into Ukraine, a routine act laden with ominous implications. However, this time, a fleet of drones veered off course, encroaching upon Polish airspace, a daring move that could reshape global alliances. Poland, quick to respond, activated its defense protocols. The Polish armed forces, bolstered by NATO allies, descended upon the skies, intercepting multiple drones. While no casualties were reported, one drone struck a home, shattering the peace of a serene village on the border. This marked the first time NATO had to engage actively against Russian threats within their own skies since Ukraine's war began. Meanwhile, world leaders erupted in condemnation of Russia's actions. The Kremlin denied accusations, but speculation swirled that this was a calculated provocation meant to gauge NATO's resolve. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a stark warning: the recent drone incursions set a perilous precedent, urging the West to unite against Moscow's escalating aggression. In a dramatic escalation, Poland invoked Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty, a rare move emphasizing the severity of the danger. Prime Minister Donald Tusk praised the actions of Polish forces but highlighted a dark reality: this was only the 8th invocation of Article 4 since the treaty's inception in 1949, a chilling indicator of how close the continent teeters on the brink of war. But Russia, undeterred, doubled down. On September 13, military movements revealed the deployment of Iskander-M missile systems, short-range ballistic missiles with a staggering reach. These weapons could strike targets up to 500 kilometers away, equipped with devastating warheads, including nuclear options. With whispers of upgraded models capable of even greater distances, the threat looms larger than ever. The Iskander missile systems, now positioned dangerously close to Poland, raise alarms across Europe. Analysts pinpointed their locations in the Kaliningrad region, a strategic outpost bordering Lithuania and Poland. The Cyber Barasho analyst group disclosed the exact coordinates, revealing that 6 NATO countries lay within the missile strike radius: Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Sweden, and Germany. Could this bold maneuver be a precursor to an even darker reality?
Rumors swirl about new missile variants featuring refined propulsion that could reach nearly 1,000 kilometers, threatening a vast swath of Europe from Germany to the Netherlands. The impending storm grows fiercer as both sides brace for the next move in this geopolitical chess game. As tensions spiral, what will be the repercussions of Russia's provocative stance? Will NATO's response be strong enough to deter further aggression, or will this shocking escalation mark the beginning of an unprecedented conflict in Europe? The world watches, hearts racing with apprehension, as the situation unfolds. Previously, we learned that 6 NATO countries now fall within the reach of Russia's missile systems in Kaliningrad, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Sweden, and Germany. Today, we'll explore just how dangerous this reality has become and why it could ignite a new crisis in Europe. Imagine a darkened map, illuminated by the shadow of missiles capable of striking capitals and cities at dizzying range. These short-range ballistic missiles, known as Iskanders, cover the entirety of Lithuania, including its capital, Vilnius, and all of Latvia, right down to Riga. Almost a third of Estonia lies within their deadly grasp, along with most of Poland, including Warsaw. Even Sweden's and Germany's capitals, Stockholm and Berlin, lie within a panic-inducing 62 miles of the missile's estimated reach. But what if these numbers don't tell the whole story? The precise range of the Iskander missile isn't fully verified. Rumors swirl about a new, far more powerful version equipped with a solid fuel engine, potentially extending its reach to 1,000 kilometers, or 620 miles. Picture a weapon now capable of striking deep into the heart of Europe. No official word has come from Russian authorities about this potential upgrade. Yet, just imagine the consequences if such a long-range missile already exists, stationed somewhere in Kaliningrad. Suddenly, Germany, Austria, Czechia, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, and the Netherlands would all be sitting ducks. In the meantime, the missiles visibly deployed right now are Iskander-MS, the standard variants. An open-source video surfaced, capturing these missile launchers blinking along the E28 highway near the village of Kudryavtsevo in Kaliningrad. You can almost hear the murmurs of tension rising as analysts pinpoint these systems with chilling precision. Why is Russia pressing so hard now? The Kremlin is staging the Zapad 2025 military exercises, running alongside Belarus, one of its closest allies. Though most drills focus on Belarusian bases, activity in Kaliningrad signals a message interwoven with menace. Brussels and NATO have watched these moves with apprehension for months. Could this massive show of force be more than rehearsal? Might it disguise an attempt to pressure NATO's eastern flank? Or worse, serve as the ignition for a chaotic escalation? As the wind whistles through the cold Baltic air, and distant engines hum across borders, Europe waits breathlessly. Will diplomacy hold firm, or is the stage set for a new and dangerous conflict? The clock is ticking, and the next move could shatter the fragile balance. NATO and Russia stand on the brink of an explosive confrontation. A heated episode unfolded as Russia cunningly positioned Iskander missiles targeting Poland, further inflaming an already tense landscape. The situation spiraled on September 10 when Russian forces unleashed a wave of drones and missiles over Ukraine, an act that seemed routine at first. However, this time, between 19 to 23 drones veered westward, breaching Polish airspace, an unprecedented maneuver that set off alarms across the continent. Poland swiftly answered the challenge, deploying its armed forces in a calculated effort to intercept the incoming threats. With assistance from the Dutch Air Force and allied NATO nations, the Polish military successfully neutralized several Russian drones, averting potential catastrophe. Yet, as one drone struck a civilian property, damaging the home and a parked vehicle, the gravity of the situation deepened. This marked the first time NATO had to actively counter Russian threats within its own airspace during the ongoing conflict with Ukraine, sending shockwaves throughout Europe. Despite the Kremlin's denials of intent, international condemnation surged. World leaders rallied against Russia's reckless provocations, with Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, cautioning the globe about what he termed an alarming escalation. If Moscow isn't met with resolute opposition now, it will continue to push boundaries, he warned, underscoring the stakes involved. The call for a unified response reverberated as Poland invoked Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. highlighting its commitment to collective security and collaboration among allies. The tension didn't ease but intensified on September 13, when Russia moved Iskander missile systems closer to the Polish frontier. These missiles, capable of reaching targets 500 kilometers away and housing various lethal warheads including nuclear capabilities, present a chilling threat. The agility and speed of these missiles, former nightmares for Ukraine, now loom ominously over European nations, already at risk as reports suggest Russia is ramping up production. In the shadows, an analytical group uncovered that 6 NATO countries now lie within striking distance of the Iskander missile system's range. The revelation that regions of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and even parts of Estonia could suffer assaults was alarming. As speculation swirled regarding advanced versions of these missiles potentially boasting even longer ranges, anxiety settled across Europe. If Russia were to use these advanced weapons, the implications would be staggering, potentially thrusting a myriad of NATO nations into the fray. While Russia exercises provocation and assertiveness through military drills like Zapad 2025, the atmosphere remains electric. Poland's immediate response sparked discussions among EU officials, while neighboring countries braced themselves for the possibility of aggression. The military exercises and heightened interactions reflect a far deeper strategy at play, leaving Europe caught in a storm of uncertainty and striving for stability. In a tense moment, Romania faced a similar crisis when a Russian drone infiltrated its airspace, echoing the previous incursion into Poland. Romanian fighter jets sprang into action, tracking the intruder, a winged embodiment of a tense geopolitical atmosphere. Though the drone caused no destruction, its presence signified a game of cat and mouse, raising alarms about Moscow's intentions and NATO's resolve. As the sound of uncertainty fills the air, a gripping question lingers: what happens next as NATO and Russia reach a point of no return? As Europe watches with bated breath, the stage is set for either a decisive stand or a catastrophic misstep. Will this be the moment that sparks a larger conflict, or can diplomacy still weave a thread of peace between the hardened fronts? As the world teeters on the brink of chaos, tensions between NATO and Russia escalate alarmingly. The Kremlin, in a brazen act, has directed its Iskander ballistic missiles towards Poland, pushing the specter of war ever closer. Just when you thought the situation couldn't spiral further, it did. In Kaliningrad, Russia unleashed a barrage of drones, and among them were numerous devices that traveled across the border into Polish airspace. Why would they take such a dangerous gamble? On September 10, the skies over Ukraine were ignited with a fierce assault, a regular occurrence as drones and missiles rained down. Yet this time, a significant twist emerged. A swarm of 19 to 23 drones veered westward, breaching Poland's former sanctuary. This unprecedented move shocked the world, shuddering hasty memories of previous incursions. Poland, however, was ready. With heightened defenses and nightly air patrols, they swiftly neutralized several threats, avoiding casualties but not without damage to civilian property. Amidst this storm, Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, emphasized the seriousness of the breach, invoking Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. This rarely used protocol allows NATO members to convene on matters threatening their collective security. Imagine the weight of invoking a clause meant for extraordinary circumstances, only 8 times since the treaty's inception in 1949. Russia, however, remained defiant, claiming no intent to escalate but instead positioning Iskander missile systems closer to Poland's borders. As the world held its breath, those Iskander missiles, capable of reaching targets 500 kilometers away at speeds over 5,000 miles per hour, became a palpable threat. The stakes were raised even higher, as reports emerged suggesting their production had surged by 66% since the previous year, with potentially deadlier models emerging from Russian labs. Could this simply be a show of force, or is Russia daring NATO to respond? Digging deeper, analysts revealed the strategic placement of these missiles in Kaliningrad, within striking distance of several NATO nations. The thought of missiles capable of targeting major European cities sparked a wave of anxiety across the continent. As the full scope of the situation settled in, nations began to reaffirm their commitment to solidarity, aware that complacency could lead to irreversible consequences. The ongoing military exercises, dubbed Zapad 2025, showcased Russia's continued audacity. How long could this dangerous game of brinkmanship persist without igniting the flames of conflict? Amidst these calculations and countermeasures, NATO swiftly organized Operation Eastern Sentry. This new military initiative echoed loudly, a clear answer to Russia's reckless maneuvers. A coalition of forces stood ready from different nations, reinforcing the alliance's commitment to protect their shared integrity. Was this the moment of unity that would deter further aggressions, or merely the calm before an inevitable storm? The world held its breath, caught in the fragile web of geopolitics and warfare, wondering how swiftly the tides would change. Tensions in Eastern Europe have spiraled into a dangerous new chapter. Just days ago, Russia's brazen actions pushed the world closer to a potential conflict involving NATO itself. Explosions crackled on the border of Ukraine, but what followed was far more alarming. A swarm of nearly 24 drones crossed into Polish airspace, igniting alarms across the alliance. Poland responded swiftly, their jets soaring into twilight skies to intercept the threat. Yet, this was only the beginning. The shadow of war looms larger. NATO has shifted into a higher gear of readiness by launching the Eastern Sentry operation, a bold step to fortify its eastern flank against further provocations. Forces are being reinforced across 8 countries, with contributions pouring in from allies determined to hold the line. Denmark sends F-16 fighters and an anti-air warfare frigate. France commits 3 Rafale jets, Germany dispatches 4 Eurofighters. Meanwhile, defenses against drone attacks, from tracking sensors to interceptors, are being rapidly deployed. The stakes? Defending every inch of NATO territory, from Poland's borders to Lithuania's skies. Amid the rumble of jets and the buzz of command centers, the air smells of anticipation and unease. Soldiers train under the gray dawn, weapons humming with readiness. The hum of electronics monitors every blip for incoming threats, every breath charged with the knowledge that one misstep could ignite a wider conflict. The United Kingdom pledges unwavering support, though precise details remain under wraps. Across the Atlantic, a resolute voice from the U.S. ambassador to the UN cements the Western resolve: every inch of alliance territory will be defended at all costs. And the response doesn't stop at air power. For the first time since the crisis deepened, NATO troops will set foot on Polish soil to bolster defenses. This decision marks a historic escalation and a clear message: the alliance will not back down. But how far will this build-up go? What will the Kremlin's next move be amid this flurry of preparations? The drone incursions were a warning, but the deployment of high-powered fighters and troops is a statement. Will this deter further Russian provocations, or fan the flames of conflict? The world stands at a precipice, watching and waiting. Every jet that breaks the silence, every missile tracked on radar adds to the mounting tension. What happens next could reshape the balance of power in Europe forever. Will diplomacy find a way, or will the siren calls of war grow louder? The answer lies in the days ahead, as the Eastern Sentry takes its silent vigil over a volatile border, and the world holds its breath. The world has just been thrust into a precarious state, teetering on the edge of a war that could engulf nations. The Kremlin has taken a bold and alarming step by positioning its Iskander ballistic missiles in Kaliningrad, targeting Poland directly. NATO, sensing the escalating threat, is mobilizing troops at lightning speed. What happens when the line between provocation and retaliation is blurred? Let's rewind to September 10. Russia unleashed a torrent of drones and missiles into Ukraine, a familiar sight, yet this time something sinister was at play. A calculated move saw 19 to 23 drones not halting in Ukraine's airspace but veering westward and invading Poland's territory, an unprecedented breach that sent shockwaves across the globe. The air crackled with tension as Poland sprang into action, bolstered by NATO allies. Fighter jets roared through the skies, intercepting several Russian drones, and the clash reverberated through the countryside. In one instance, a drone struck a home near the border, a haunting reminder of the volatility that now marked the region. Poland's swift response was pivotal. For the first time since the war began, a NATO member had to confront Russian aggressors head-on in its own skies. World leaders reacted, with European nations uniting in condemnation of Moscow's brazen actions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a dire warning: this escalation was but a step in Russia's relentless ambition to push boundaries. Would the NATO coalition hold strong against further provocations, or would any sign of weakness invite more aggression? As shadows lengthened,
Poland made a ground-shaking decision, invoking Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. Prime Minister Donald Tusk articulated the gravity of the situation, stating that Poland's defensive actions were a significant success against increasing threats. It was an alarming moment in history. Article 4 had only been activated 7 times since the treaty's signing in 1949.
Could this be the turning point for NATO, or was it merely a prelude to greater conflict?
Just when tensions seemed ready to cool, the Kremlin dialed up the stakes further.
On September 13, rumors surfaced of 2 Iskander-M missile systems being relocated dangerously close to Poland's border.
These missiles are designed to be viciously effective, reaching speeds that make interception nearly impossible. They could unleash devastation over hundreds of kilometers, armed with a gruesome array of warheads.
What does this mean for Poland and its allies, who are already on high alert?
With intelligence analysts pinpointing the exact locations of the missile launchers in Kaliningrad, the situation became increasingly precarious. 6 NATO countries fell within the striking distance of these feared weapons.
What would happen if a missile fired from Kaliningrad hit its target? Could one miscalculation trigger catastrophic consequences across Europe? As NATO allies rush to bolster defenses, the looming question hangs heavy: can the world avert a descent into chaos? With all eyes on Eastern Europe, the unfolding drama reveals just how tenuous peace can be, and the silent hope echoes: will the flames of war be extinguished before they engulf millions?
Previously, we saw how NATO's combined strength far surpasses Russia's, especially as Moscow struggles to advance in Ukraine. European nations near Russia are rapidly reinforcing their defenses, bracing for what could spiral into a larger conflict.
Now, imagine standing at the edge of Lithuania's borders.
There, massive new fortifications rise like steel sentinels, formidable and unyielding.
These aren't ordinary defenses. They represent a bold, ambitious effort to stop any sudden Russian advances before they can even begin.
The air is thick with tension, the scent of cold metal mingling with the crisp Baltic breeze. Soldiers patrol tirelessly, their footsteps echoing against concrete walls built to withstand the fiercest assault. But the situation inside Russia's ranks paints an even darker picture. Reports reveal a shocking truth: some Russian soldiers are sabotaging their own efforts, literally harming themselves to escape the horrors of battle.
Why?
To secure hefty payments from the government for injuries sustained, an act of desperation that exposes cracks deep within the Kremlin's war machine. The sound of gunshots, not from the enemy, but from within, echoes a tragic reality few want to face. This unraveling morale hints at a much bigger story, one of a military faltering under pressure, where loyalty and courage are being replaced by fear and self-preservation.
Could this internal collapse signal the beginning of the end for Russia's ambitions? Or will these fractures only deepen the chaos on the battlefield?
As Europe strengthens its borders and NATO prepares for the worst,
the world watches nervously, sensing that the next move could either ignite a full-scale war or force a desperate retreat.
The stakes have never been higher. Stay tuned for more updates on how these extraordinary border defenses could shape the future of the region.
Discover the untold struggles inside the Russian army as this conflict pushes them to breaking point.
The next chapter may hold a revelation that no one saw coming.
What happens when the borders of peace are crossed and all-out war looms on the horizon? The world is teetering on the edge as tensions between NATO and Russia flare like never before. In a daring escalation, the Kremlin has aimed its Iskander missiles directly at Poland, triggering a rapid response from NATO troops. Each heartbeat echoes a question: are we witnessing the beginning of a devastating conflict? It all began on September 10th.
The air crackled with tension as the Russian military launched a ferocious barrage of drones and missiles into the heart of Ukraine. This was routine, a brutal dance they had engaged in before. Yet, this time, a shocking twist unfolded.
A swarm of 19 to 23 drones didn't stop in Ukraine.
Instead, they ventured west, crossing into Poland, igniting an unprecedented crisis. Poland's armed forces were on high alert, having anticipated such a scenario. Nightly jet intercepts and fortified defenses became their lifeline. And then, in a flash, Polish and Allied aircraft sprang into action, shooting down several Russian drones. Thankfully, casualties were avoided, but one drone did strike a village house, leaving destruction in its wake. For the first time since the Ukraine war's inception, NATO had to fiercely defend its airspace, marking a historic shift in the conflict. Amidst the fallout, Russia vehemently denied any intent to target Poland, but global leaders decried the Kremlin's actions. What was the real motive behind this audacious provocation? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky raised alarms, stating that Moscow continually pushes boundaries without facing consequences. Today marked a new escalation, he warned, urging the world to comprehend the gravity of the situation. As if the situation couldn't get worse, Poland invoked Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. This rare action indicated deep concern among allies regarding security. Prime Minister Donald Tusk declared that downing drones was not just a success but a pivot in political dynamics, signaling an urgent call for unified consultations. But then, just days later, the Kremlin escalated further, shifting Iskander missile systems closer to Poland's borders. These are no ordinary missiles, designed for precision. Some can reach targets up to 500 kilometers away. As the potential nightmare became all too real, military analysts confirmed the alarming vicinity of these threats to 6 NATO countries, including Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. What if these missiles were capable of carrying nuclear warheads? Speculations swirled around whether a more advanced version could extend their range even further. The world held its breath, teetering on the brink of chaos, as both sides braced for what could come next. How far would Russia push before facing the full might of NATO's response? In this high-stakes drama, every moment counts, and every decision may tip the balance toward war or resolution. The only certainty is that the cry for safety echoes louder than ever in the tense air of Eastern Europe. Will the resilience of nations prevail, or are we marching inexorably toward catastrophe? What happens when a single act of aggression sends shockwaves through the global stage? The world teetered on the brink of chaos as Russia shifted its military strategy, launching Iskander ballistic missiles toward Poland from its enclave in Kaliningrad. This brazen move has left NATO scrambling, tensions flaring, and the public holding its breath, wondering if war could become a chilling reality. The turmoil began on September 10, when Russia unleashed a storm of drones and missiles against Ukraine, a routine yet deadly occurrence. However, this attack diverged drastically from the norm. Somewhere between 19 and 23 drones veered off course, crossing into Polish airspace, a move never witnessed before. Alarm bells rang as the international community grappled with the implications of such an audacious violation. Poland, ever vigilant, sprang into action. Having prepared for an eventuality like this, their armed forces swiftly mobilized. With fighter jets in the air and heightened defenses, they were poised for a confrontation. Their response was not a mere show of force. Supported by the Dutch Air Force and other NATO allies, they successfully intercepted several drones. Fortunately, while no casualties transpired, one drone inflicted damage on a home in a nearby village. This marked a historic moment, the first active resistance by a NATO member against Russian aggression since the onset of the Ukraine conflict. In the aftermath, the ramifications escalated. Russia, defiant in its stance, denied any intent to target Poland, yet the world listened as leaders voiced their condemnation. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, became the harbinger of impending doom, warning that Russia's actions pushed the boundaries of provocation. The incident, he said, was not merely a misstep but a dangerous escalation that required a measured and resolute response. How far would Russia go before consequence lingered? Poland, with its strategic position within NATO, took a landmark step, invoking Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. Prime Minister Donald Tusk's declaration echoed stability amid chaos. The downing of drones wasn't just a tactical success but a potential shift in power dynamics, as it sent a clear message to Russia: these borders will not be crossed without repercussions. Yet, was this enough to deter further aggression? On September 13, the situation deteriorated further. The Kremlin moved Iskander missile systems closer to Poland, signifying a dark turn. These short-range missiles, honed for precision strikes, are capable of hitting targets over 310 miles away, including major cities in neighboring NATO states. With their track record of efficiency in Ukraine, the thought of them being positioned so near the Polish border ignited anxiety throughout Europe. Intelligence analysts spotted the missile launchers along crucial highways, confirming their alarming proximity. The findings showed that 6 NATO countries now fell within range.
The implications were staggering. Would Europe's capital cities, including Warsaw and Vilnius, remain safe? Could NATO respond effectively to avoid becoming embroiled in a larger conflict? In the air hung an eerie question: what was the Kremlin's endgame? As the world watches, only time will reveal if diplomacy can hold the line against brute force, or if the specter of war will cast its pall over an unsuspecting continent. The tension in Eastern Europe has reached a boiling point.
A recent incident has moved the world closer to a potential war between NATO and Russia. The backdrop of this perilous situation unfolds in Kaliningrad, where Russia has strategically positioned its Iskander ballistic missiles, targeting Poland. Meanwhile, NATO forces are mobilizing, and the world is bracing itself for the next move.
Flashback to September 10, when Russia unleashed a swarm of drones over Ukraine. The routine assault took an alarming twist.
Instead of being contained within Ukrainian borders, 19 to 23 of those drones crossed into Poland.
This unprecedented intrusion sent ripples of shock through the international community.
Poland's military, forewarned and heavily prepared, sprang into action, swiftly deploying jets and interceptors. In a fortunate turn of events, they successfully shot down these hostile drones, preventing potential catastrophe, though one still struck a village, damaging homes.
Fast forward to the outrage from global leaders.
Russia insisted it had no intention of harming Poland, but skepticism ran rampant.
Among the critics, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned of Moscow's alarming pattern of aggression. If unchallenged, they escalate.
His proclamation echoed the fears of many that Russia would push the envelope until it met a resolute response. This series of events escalated when Poland decided to invoke Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. Such a request, a form of urgent consultation within NATO, was only the 8th of its kind since 1949, underscoring the gravity of the situation. Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, articulated the military's success and its implications for European security. "This is a signal, a call for unity," he asserted.
But the Kremlin wasn't ready to back down. On September 13, they made a dangerous move, transferring Iskander-M missile systems closer to the Polish border.
These short-range ballistic missiles can strike targets up to 500 kilometers away, carrying explosive payloads that range from conventional to nuclear. The presence of these formidable weapons raised alarms among NATO allies, who began to wonder how far Russia would go.
Could these missiles reach their capitals?
Open-source intelligence groups revealed the exact locations of these missile launchers, disclosing a terrifying reality. 6 NATO nations were within the Iskander's strike range. Images circulated online, highlighting the position of these threat vectors, and with every detail unveiled, anxiety coursed through Europe. As rumors swirled about enhanced missile capabilities capable of reaching even distant targets, the stakes grew higher. What more did Russia have planned? Would diplomacy hold strong, or would the continent become engulfed in conflict? The world watched, breathless, waiting for the next act in this high-stakes drama. Would cooler heads prevail, or would the ominous shadow of war loom ever closer?